Hey guys, welcome back. This is kind of like season 2 for us of our podcast. We had a little hiatus and we'll come back with a bang with Barry from Wolfman's Got Nards.
Hi everyone.
I'm joined by my heterosexual life partner, Rob. So today we're going to be speaking to Barry and Rob. I think I said Rob as well then. Do you want to kick it off? Do you remember the first horror you watched, Barry? Do you remember, did you sneak down the stairs? Did you go to a cinema? How did you do that?
I didn't have to sneak at all. I was offered to watch it with my dad, and it was the earliest one I remember was I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old, and it was Just Before Dawn from 1981. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Yes.
Cool.
You've mentioned that on recent.
I have, yeah. Yeah, so to this day, I think it's still one of the greatest horror movies of all time for me. I think it's because of my connection to the movie. But I still remember, I remember.
Nostalgia.
Yeah. I mean, we were watching on a little 14-inch TV that was massive at the time. And we just lay on the living room carpet and watched this movie on a nice little tiny TV. And it blew my mind. And I think ever since then, that's what made me love horror movies.
So your dad's kind of the reason you're into horror?
Yeah, dude, the funny thing is he's not even a horror fan. Yeah, he likes films, but I think back in the day, I don't know about you guys, but back in the day, my parents didn't really care what I watched as long as they got to watch what they wanted. And I would just kind of walk in behind them and sit and watch whatever they were watching. But I think once I got used to it, my dad would say, "Oh, we're going to watch this film. Do you want to watch it with us or do you want to go into your room?" And I would just say, "I'll just watch it." And just from then. So my dad did help. He was a huge influence on me for watching film, but not horror. I think I just get into the horror myself.
You're a big Halloween fan, as Rob told. I've seen from you, I watch your channel quite a lot as well. Not fangirling, Barry, just saying. You're a big Halloween fan. I'm a Friday the 13th guy myself. I do like Halloween. I'm not saying it's a bad franchise at all, but what's your favourite installment in the series?
It's got to be the first one. You can't beat the first Halloween, even if it wasn't to do with a franchise, and if it was the only movie in the franchise. You watch Halloween, it's up there with movies like Psycho. It's a movie that can stand the test of time, and it can also stand on its own without its sequels as well. Whereas when you look at Friday the 13th, obviously you've probably got a deeper connection to that franchise than I do. I don't know how you feel about it, but watching Friday the 13th, it almost feels like you have to have the Friday the 13th sequel to make the first movie relevant because of the iconic character, Jason Voorhees. Whereas everything you want in Halloween is in that first movie. Whereas I think with you guys in Friday the 13th, everything you want with Friday the 13th could be spread over the first couple of movies.
Yeah, definitely. I know exactly what you mean. I think I like Friday the 13th because it's a bit more batshit crazy than Halloween. It's like, oh no, it's his mum, and then the second one's like, oh no, he's alive, and you're like, how is he alive?
The thing with Friday the 13th, they like to say there's different sorts of ways to look at. Like Michael Myers has always had the mask, hasn't he? Yeah. But when you look at, Jason, obviously in the first film, obviously it's his mother, so that's a different kind of,
We do see Jason though, don't you? He's got like a little potato head going on.
But then he has the sack on his head in number 2. And then even you go to like Jason X when he has the it's like a
Mecha Jason.
Mecha Jason, yeah, it's a different sort of version of it. But was John Carpenter's Halloween the first film? Was that the first time you ever watched a Halloween film, or was there another one you saw first?
It was definitely the first one I watched first, but I didn't really process it until I was a teenager. I must have been maybe 12, 13 years old at the time, and that was when I started getting into other Halloween movies, and I loved the other Halloween movies, but I thought I'll watch them because they're more up to date. Well, at the time they were. And I said, I'll give the first one a chance again because it felt a little bit dated when I was younger and I didn't understand it. But when I watched it again as a teenager, it blew me away. I'm like, wow, this is an amazing movie. And I think at the time, that's when I started loving horror movies. And I watched Halloween almost every day when I was that age. And I just fell in love with the franchise because of it. And then luckily, maybe a year later, Halloween H2O came out. And I think that's why I hold Halloween H2O quite high on my list, because it was the first Halloween movie that I watched that was new at the time. Whereas the other Halloween movies that I watched, they were already old films before I got around to watching them. Whereas I thought, wow, this new Halloween movie is coming out. Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back 20 years later. It was massive at the time, and for me anyway. So I think when it comes to, obviously Halloween's most people's greatest Halloween film. See, when it comes to sequels though, I still personally believe that H2O, for me, as the best sequel.
Well, while we're talking about sequels, I've got to ask you about The Bastard Child. There's Halloween 3. How do you feel about that? Like, I'm a big Halloween 3 fan, but how do you feel about that film? That's how you feel about that film.
Yeah. Very special in the archive.
He's got the silver shamrock. I didn't notice that.
I love Halloween 3. Back in the day, when I first watched it, I was like, what is this? Where's Michael Myers? Because I didn't know that Michael Myers wasn't in it. So I hated it. I was like, what is this garbage? I think my only focus was, where's Michael? Where's Michael? And I didn't process the film. And again, like a lot of films, you watch it again and you're like, oh, that's really good. And it's the same with Halloween 3. It's almost like John Carpenter's Halloween without Michael Myers. It's got the same score, similar score. It's got that same mood and atmosphere that you get in the first and second movie. So everything that was great about those movies is in Season of the Witch. The only difference is you don't have Michael Myers. But yeah, on a rewatch as an adult, I love it. It's one of my favourite Halloween films.
I look back at Halloween H2O. I remember when I think it was early 2000, because I sort of watched horror films in the late 80s, but I was not a big horror fan. I've always made that a point that I've never been, not like yourselves, like the two of you. I've never been a massive horror movie fan. But when I watched Halloween H2O, that woke me up to the franchise of Halloween, really, because I had seen Halloween before, John Carpenter's version, but I never really concentrated on it properly because, again, wasn't a big horror fan, and my Carpenter, all my loyalty to Carpenter was Big Trouble in Little China, so and Escape from New York and The Thing. So when I came up along H2O, I thought it made me more interested in the franchise, and it made me wanting to seek out more of the movies that I'd never seen before, and that's how my sort of interest, because I'd say Halloween's probably my favourite horror franchise, maybe with Nightmare on Elm Street a close second.
H2O was the first Halloween that I watched, because what year did H2O come out?
98.
98, 97?
98, 97?
Yeah, well, I was born in 95, so that's sort of like the most kind of like one that got the hype, because Resurrection got a lot of negativity. I can see you and Barry smirking because you think I'm a young pup now.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
But yeah, that was the first one I remember watching. I watched that one with my mum, and I was really surprised that LL Cool J was in it. That really blew my mind, that he was the guard at the fence.
Yeah, there's still Halloween films I've never seen. I've still not seen Halloween 4 and 5.
All right.
And I'm not seeing Resurrection either.
Oh, it really confuses me in Resurrection because Busta Rhymes, knows Kung Fu because he likes Kung Fu movies, and that really confuses me.
Okay. Same with the guy from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you've not seen Halloween 4.
No, I think I've watched the opening scene many times because a lot of people always tell me that's the best thing about it, the best opening of a Halloween film. So I've watched that many times, and
that's the one where he's in the ambulance and he puts the thumb in the guy's head.
Oh, I can't tell you because I've not seen it.
Is that the one, Barry? Yes, there you go.
I've still not seen it, but as Barry knows, that I've always been after the Halloween Scream Factory box set.
Okay.
And sadly, it's such an expensive Grail piece. I've never had a chance to own it, so that's why I've never seen Halloween 4. I mean,
is that the metal tin one?
No, that was an Anchor Bay one, I think. Barry will know that. But of course, apart from, have you got it up there?
Get it out, Barry. The DVD.
Barry, so obviously your channel, the sort of like the emblem, the logo, the Wolfman's got Nards, even the name of the actual YouTube content that you put out is based on one of your favourite films, isn't it? Which is The Monster Squad. So when did you get to watch The Monster Squad originally?
Where did I get what, sorry?
Where did you watch The Monster Squad? What year, whereabouts were you? So, what was your experience watching that movie? Because clearly it's had a massive influence on your channel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably going to be the same with you guys. Maybe not you, Chad, because you're a bit younger. But when you go to the video store as a kid, the movies that stand out with the VHS cover is the movie that you want to see. And The Monster Squad just stuck out when I was a kid. You know the cover yourself. And I rented it out, took it home, and absolutely loved it. And I just prayed that it came on normal TV. We call it council telly. And as soon as it came on, we recorded it, and then I just watched it over and over and over again. I absolutely loved it. I was one of these kids who, although I love The Goonies and it is a better made movie, I would always go back to The Monster Squad before The Goonies, because The Goonies kids are my type of kid, and that was me as a child. And I think they were more realistic to me. So even though I love the Goonies, I always went back to the Monster Squad. And when I watched the film, I automatically thought that nobody had ever heard of the movie, because anytime I spoke to someone, they would say, never saw it, don't know what it is. And even to this day, people still do that. So it was a very rare film for people to see. So back in 2011, I'd done this not for a laugh, but I just set up a YouTube channel and I thought, what am I going to call it? And I said, I'll call it something from the Monster Squad. Wolfman's got Nards. And it just kind of took off from there.
That's one of like the most iconic sayings though, like in horror kind of like what was it, the community. Like if someone says that and you're part of the horror community, you know straight away that's from Monster Squad, which is a great film. I recently watched that with my 6-year-old son and he loved it. He thought it was very funny when the child kicked the Wolfman in the Nards. Yeah. He thought I was hilarious, and I just reminded me of being a kid and watching that thinking, that's hilarious.
Well, the Monster Squad has, it has, like I say, it has the phrase, that sort of thing. It even has like Rock It Till You Drop. That's like its own song, isn't it? You see songs in movies that will turn up in other movies, but that song has never appeared anywhere else, to my knowledge, other than the Monster Squad. I can't remember if that song was done just for that movie. Maybe it was, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was done for the movie only. It was Michael Cimbello that done it. The guy that done Maniac. She's a Maniac. Right. And it was done solely for the film. Yeah, so it never got released. Yeah, it never got a proper release. It got released eventually on the LP when that came out on the vinyl for the Monster Squad, but it was never released as a song. It was only specifically made for that film. But yeah, that's, again, you get your mid to late 80s with the iconic songs for those type of movies, and Rock Until You Drop was that one for the Monster Squad. And again, I loved that song. Nobody even heard of it, but nobody even knew it was Michael Cimbello at the time either.
No, it's funny because, like I say, every time I hear that song, I straight away know what movie it comes from. And even like, Andre Gower, who plays Sean in the movie, he wears the famous T-shirt, the red T-shirt with, in yellow writing, Stephen King rules. And when I was trying to, because I've met Barry before at the For Love of Horror in 2019, pre-pandemic, and I was trying to find you, and it was quite easy to spot you because you're the only person that day wearing that T-shirt that I saw.
Yeah, it's a rare T-shirt. Well, I say it's a rare T-shirt. I actually saw a few people wearing that at that convention because obviously Fred Decker was there.
I saw that one in the news.
Yeah, it was because Fred Decker was there, the director of the Monster Squad.
Of course he was, yeah. He did Night of the Creeps as well, didn't he, Fred Decker? Yeah,
he did.
Great film, another great film.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Barry, another thing I wanted to bring up, I mentioned to Rob before this podcast, is you are a big fan of the Back to the Future franchise.
I am, yes.
And I am not, as you might know. So I just want to know from a fan's point of view, what makes it that piece de resistance? What makes you happy about it?
Where do you begin? The Back to the Future is my all-time greatest movie. There is.
Rob did tell me that.
Yeah, there is no movie anywhere near close to Back to the Future, and the reason being is the acting, the soundtrack, the score, the storyline. Everything was so advanced for 1985, and even today, you watch Back to the Future today, and it's still so advanced for its time. It's unbelievable. And obviously, I've loved the movie for over 30 years. So when you watch the film, anytime you see it, you get that nostalgic rush. I know sometimes nostalgia can blind you for movies that may not be good anymore, but Back to the Future is not like that, because you can show Back to the Future to someone today for the first time and they're totally blown away. I've no idea why you don't like it, or even if you do like it, I've no idea why it's not the greatest film for you, because it blows me.
But you, like I said, when I didn't really badmouth, I just said why I didn't like it. But you're the reason why I don't badmouth it. People like you, because I could the passion, like you talking to me, I can see how much you love it, and I think the fans of Back to the Future make the film more than the film. Like for me, Back to the Future is about a creepy old bloke that takes a teenager back in time to diddle his mother. That's fine. That's fine. That's what the film's about. That's good. And you know what really annoys me about the film? The car. What's he got? What's he got? Well, you've got the car in his hand, hasn't he? Right. I just don't think it's as cool as other film cars, like the General Lee from Dukes of Hazzard. Great car, muscle car. Christine, yeah, 1967 Plymouth Fury.
I mean, luckily, well, I mean, luckily, obviously, I share my views with Barry on this occasion.
He does.
I'm a big fan of the movie myself, and like you say, I get if some people come along. I took my nephew to see Back to the Future 2 at the 2015. I think it was the 30-year anniversary, and I thought, to be fair, he had not seen the first film, so I thought it might be a bit complicated him watching the movie. And sadly, he did not like the film. He thought it was quite boring. But then again, because I'm a big fan of the second film, because weirdly enough, the first film I ever saw in the trilogy was the second film. But I loved it so much, I wanted to go back and watch the first one. So I did, and then obviously number 3 came out. But no, I share your passion with Back to the Future as much as Chad does not. But
I like I said, I appreciate the fans of the film.
You said you did like the third one.
I said the third one's the best. I didn't say I liked it.
The third.
I like the cowboy aspect.
Okay, yeah.
There's something else I like about the Back to the Future movies, or any movies that are made in the 80s. When they set them in the 50s and the 60s, and they give you the 50s and 60s music, there's something about that type of film that I'm just drawn towards. I mentioned on another podcast about Dirty Dancing, and it's the exact same thing about that. It's an 80s film set in the 50s and 60s, and it's just they recreate the 50s and 60s perfectly. And with Back to the Future, they set it in 1955, and it's stunning. You know, the soundtrack for the 50s is amazing. I love 50s music, so when I hear all these 1950s songs by Bobby V, you get Earth Angel, all that kind of stuff, it's just amazing. It takes me back to my childhood. It takes me back to what I love. And one of the greatest scenes of all time in that film as well is when, I don't know if you've seen it, the picture where they're disappearing and his hand starts to disappear while he's playing.
Yeah.
But then his parents get together and he gets his hand back and he's in the photograph. What a great piece of cinematic history. I went to see it in the cinema for the 25th anniversary, sorry. I went to see it in the cinema, and I was crying all the way through it because I couldn't believe I was watching the greatest film of all time on the big screen. It was just amazing.
That's the special thing about, say, watching a movie that you're so passionate about and then seeing it in its original format. Because let's face it, every film that comes out should be seen on the big screen because that's how it's intended. If you can then get, because obviously, like you and I and many other people, we all watched from our era. We watched movies that were on TVs, 14-inch little TVs back in the day, 21-inch maybe if you were lucky enough. If they, I can't remember if that was the correct size. But and the good thing is about films like Dirty Dancing and Back to the Future, though it does actually go back to its the 50s, it still manages to make it still an 80s film, even though it's set in a different era in certain parts of the film. So it still keeps that modernisation of its time. Yeah. Because Dirty Dancing, like you say, is set in the 50s, but it feels like an 80s movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like you get 80s movies that they set it in the 50s or whatever, but when you're watching it because it's a nostalgic 80s movie, not because it feels like the 50s, but it feels like an 80s movie capturing the 50s moments. And it's another film that's similar to that is The Midnight Hour from 1985.
Yes, we spoke about that, yeah.
They've got things that are set in the 50s, like the 50s music. It's amazing. It's amazing what 80s movies can do to you if you watched it when you're a child. Even when you watch it today, you're like, that's capturing two different eras, but set in the 80s.
Yeah, I do believe that films from the 80s, like I say, they have an effect on people more so than any sort of decade that I can remember. Like 90s films are very massive and very important. To be fair, I always say the 70s is the greatest decade of filmmaking, and the 90s is second, and the 80s is just like it's its own genre really. The 80s, I mean, obviously it is a genre, but it's not so much like say murder, horror, comedy sort of thing. But the 80s has its own feel. When you're in an 80s movie, it feels like you're sucked into this this decade that has all this pop culture references, music, characters and things like that. It's just something special that I think only certain people from a certain time can understand, I think.
Maybe that's what it is with me then, maybe.
Possibly.
Because I was like bored midnight. Another thing for me is one of the main reasons I don't like the Back to the Future films is that every Christmas on ITV2, they'd show all 3 films, and my brother, who's a big Back to the Future fan, would make me watch them with him. And I feel like, because he's made me watch them over the years, I kind of resent the movies now, and I'm like, no. But I will agree with you on one thing, the music on those films is top-notch. I'll give you that, Barry. That's the one thing I'll say about that film for you.
We can definitely, have it? We can leave it with that, can't we, I suppose? But Barry, just a quick one. We want to ask you, Halloween Kills, obviously finally being released this October after many delays due to COVID. What are your thoughts? I mean, were you, how did you feel about the 2018? Was it 2018?
19, wasn't it?
18.
No, 2007?
18.
How did you feel when that film came out? Were you nervous about it?
I wasn't nervous, to be honest. I think anything could top Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So I think no matter what they've done with the story, it should have been better than H2. When I first saw it in the cinema, I went to see it twice, and I thought it was good. I thought it was one of the best sequels in the franchise. But after seeing it a few more times and really kind of letting it digest after a while, I think it's a middle of the road sequel. I think it's nowhere near the best, but it's certainly nowhere near the worst. I think it's maybe about 5th, 6th in the franchise for me. But when I compare it to Halloween H2O, which I will always do, I think Halloween H2O captures Laurie's trauma better and more realistically than Halloween 18. I know that people have issues with H2O, with the style of it. It looks like a Scream movie. It's not set in Haddonfield, etc., etc. But it has its reasons for doing those things. It's not set in Haddonfield because a woman's not going to go in hiding in her own town. She's going to go elsewhere. They've got a problem with Michael's mask. You can see his eyes. It's Michael Myers. It's Laurie's brother. He's not a mystery anymore. We need to see that connection between brother and sister. If you black out his eyes, you're not going to get that same connection as you would if you've got the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. And that's not the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes isn't, it's not to be taken literally. It's a metaphor, so you don't have to not see his eyes. It's okay to see his eyes. You can see his face in some of the films. But yeah, H2O I think was slightly better than Halloween 18. I'm not saying Halloween 18 is bad. I still really like it. It's probably one of the more well done Halloween films. It's not connected with me as much as Halloween H2O. But then when you look at Halloween Kills, I'm sure you saw the trailer for Halloween Kills. It looks like it's taken up a notch. So I'm hoping that if Halloween Kills is really good, I'll maybe appreciate the 2018 one more than I do just now.
With Halloween Kills soon to be released, have they actually started filming Halloween? Is it Ends?
Ends, yeah.
Is that what it is?
No, not yet. I think they start filming in the middle of January.
Right, okay. I've heard a little rumour, you might be able to correct this, but isn't Halloween Ends supposed to be, this is not really spoiling it, I think it's in the ether, I think it's on the internet, that Halloween Ends is actually going to be set years later after Halloween Kills. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was supposed to be set on the same night, but because of COVID and restrictions, they had to stop or rethink their process. But David Gordon Green, the director, has said we're going to be setting it a few years later. He didn't say how many years later, but we can imagine it's probably going to be set in the same year that the movie comes out. So they'll probably set it in 2022. So they'll probably set it 4 years after the events of Halloween 2018.
Right, well, we should probably wrap it up from here.
Yes.
It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you properly, Barry, instead of just over the internet.
No, we thank you very much for your time,
Definitely,
Barry.
no.
And we hope to be doing some more. Well, we will see Barry, hopefully, at the For Love of Horror festival.
Well, we'll be filming bits for the podcasts.
We'll all be at For the Love of Horror in October in Manchester. So hopefully we'll see you there and we'll get to spend some time together.
And check out Barry's channel because it's very good. And we hope to get to his level one day. So cheers, Barry, and subscribe, like, share. You know what to do.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Barry. Have a good day. Bye. We love you. It's lovely having Barry on the show.
Yeah, it's been something we wanted to do for a long time.
Definitely.
And like I say, going forward, we're hoping to get more guests on.
Well, next week we've got Tom from Monster Gab.
Tom from
so that'll
Monster
be
Gab.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
he
cool.
should, well, fingers crossed he'll be in the room with us.
Yes.
instead of over Zoom. And what we want to talk to you about as well, we've actually got our own festival coming up in North Wales where we'll be showing quite a lot of movies actually. What, the 140 short films is there, Rhiannon said?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of films coming from all over the world. So lots of places like Greece, Iran,
Pakistan.
There's going to be lots of things happening. There's going to be a lot of work on social media coming up. So we're going to be showing a couple of films ourselves.
This one was what I picked. This is Dark Signal. It's all filmed in North Wales, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The director, we're gonna. Well, you're not there, sadly.
Sadly, I'm not there.
I'm gonna be doing a Q&A with the director, and that'll be on our channel. That'll be pretty sweet. And then there is the toll.
The toll. Fingers crossed, I will be able to be here for this one.
And we're going to speak to the writer and director, aren't we?
I believe so. Yeah, we're going to be spending the evening, spending a few minutes. Well, hopefully, however long. Talking about the movie and
very excited for all of this, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that it's going to take, help us, get out there basically with what we're trying to do with something wicked and Wicked Wales and Wicked Cult Cinema, Frightening Fridays, which Chad does. We're excited and hopefully we'll get to do a few more film showings and get the podcast back up and running.
Well, fingers crossed. We'll give you a little inside scoop. We might have a show pretty soon, right, with Cult Cinema.
Yes.
We're not going to tell you the film though. But why don't give me a clue? Give me a little clue, like a little taste.
The horror.
Okay, I don't know what that is. I'm not seeing the film, but I imagine it's a good impression. So yeah, if you want to come to this, we've got room, but you'll have to email us.
We're gonna
not email, you can just inbox us and stuff.
We're going to put some details out soon, and if you follow the instructions, hopefully we'll get to see you there.
Yeah, thanks, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let us know what you think of this format, because it was different for us, and it's good to be back.